Has kindly joined us, agreed to join us, and administer the oath of office this evening.
Do we need a microphone?
Yeah.
You guys will have to share.
Your statements are more important than mine. I need you to raise your right hand and repeat after me, Mr. Gamble. I, George Gamble,
I, George Gamble,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and laws of the state of New
and laws of the state of New Mexico,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of member, Santa Fe Community College Board,
Santa Fe Community College Board,
Santa Fe, New Mexico,
Santa Fe, New Mexico,
which I am about to enter according to law
and
to the best of my ability. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, sir. And
George, do you?
30-minute prepared speech. Yeah.
And George, do you want some pictures with your family and the judge?
is the deed done?
Almost. Let's get some good pictures.
These are my assistants here. Run into serious. So I consult with them on next issue.
The list?
Great,
Oh,
thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Of the board.
Of the board?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Of the board?
Yeah. You're going to take my phone and sit I'm always
You have to come to.
This area was actually really good.
Right, you're right there? Okay. It's the days without flashes and clips. Yep. That's how it works.
I'm constantly amazed.
I like not to look.
Yeah. That woman in here cannot be me.
Gee, I used to look like that. All right. Oath of office done.
Is this a new one?
Kathy, what changes do you want to the agenda? Any?
None? Good.
Okay. Whatever.
Big crowd.
Where does this?
Member Gamble, do you have any words or any statement that you'd like to deliver? You don't have to, I'm just asking.
Well,
Make sure you're on.
can you hear me? I'm honored to fill this position, and I'm looking forward to working here at the community college to continue its growth and development over the next 6 years, at least, which is the length of my term of office. And yes, and I'm really looking forward to working with the rest of the board and the executive team and faculty and students in supporting the college, which is a very vital institution in our community. Thanks.
Thank you, and welcome to the board.
Thank you.
So the meeting is called to order. We do have a quorum. Welcome. We have a fairly long agenda tonight and a nice full room, so thank you for joining us. First thing on the agenda is the adoption of an agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
I see.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next is public comments. Do we have any public comments? Okay,
Robert Shankin is the first public comment.
great. I'm going to do a quick reminder before we start that public comments are limited to 3 minutes. And because those items have not been posted on the agenda tonight, but we'll listen and note what you have to say and are happy to hear what you have to say.
Hello. To the board, I have real concerns about chairs and directors not being able to be union participants. Most departments at SFCC are small, even smaller than my department. In the math department, we have 5 full-time math faculty. 4 of us either have been or currently are department chairs. Formally, for the 4 years I had been department chair, the amount of work I did and the pay I received was essentially unchanged. The amount of responsibility, however, was much higher. The stress could get very high. And being department chair meant that close to half my day I wasn't doing what I love, which is to teach. I remember telling our former VP, Ron Liss, how the math and science faculty, and apparently the vast majority of faculty, do not want to be department chairs. He stated that a larger department is much more likely to have a member who enjoys these sorts of managerial duties. I fully agree. I have been greatly blessed to be in a department where everyone's been willing to step up to the plate and take their turn. But our school is made up of mostly small departments. Will we be willing to step up to the plate and provide the leadership our school needs when this means no longer being represented by the union? Personally, the time I would have most appreciated union representation was when I was a department chair and in a meeting where I disagreed with President Guzman. I sure thought twice before speaking up. But don't we all think twice before speaking up in a disagreement with someone above us in the chain of command? Do we want to seriously risk reducing the pool of those willing to serve as department chairs or directors by
administrative power and make the ultimate decisions, and the chairs really play more of a facilitating role? I think almost all the faculty really like their teaching and, as Robert just mentioned, are willing to step up to the plate and take their turn to help run the department. But it's not that we're taking a stepping stone into moving into administration. Most of us really prefer to be faculty, and I would hope that the organization, the college, would consider allowing the faculty to be all faculty. And I'll probably address that again as a report, a part of the Faculty Senate report later.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. First and foremost, I want to be sure that I clarify that I'm speaking as an individual faculty member and as a former chair. So I will say, I always get nervous. I would like to express gratitude, first of all, to the governing board, and Randy, to you. You guys play a critical role in helping us determine the future of the college. And I can imagine the burden that you carry in the face of incredible challenges, especially as it has been evidenced in the most recent weeks and our governor's sweeping threats, to hire. These are dark times, and we must carry the light. What we at Santa Fe Community College understand is that higher education is not an isolated line item budget thingy. Higher education is key to the very fabric of this community. Yesterday, SFCC AAUP was officially certified to be the representative of the full-time faculty on this campus. And the State Labor Board asked that Director Griego clarify his decision regarding the inclusion of chairs and directors in the bargaining unit. This means that we have the gift of time. This issue of allowing chairs and directors into the union presents us with a beautiful opportunity in the face of possible crisis and leadership of our programs. And I would like to ask you to consider joining us as we assert our hopes and our values for the future. There will be moments when the union and the administration will sit on opposite sides of the table, and these moments, listening will be critical. I think it's safe to say that faculty really do want to hear your concerns, your vision, and your priorities for the college, and we'll ask that you hear ours too. But the collective bargaining table will hold all of us equally accountable to one another. But what I'd also like to say is that we're not always on opposite sides of the table. In fact, I think this is a time we must be united, students, faculty, staff, and administration. We must stand together as a united front in support of community. And I would ask you to consider not dividing our faculty. Excluding chairs and directors from the union carries serious implications for program leadership. It is my sincere hope that you will listen carefully to what they desire, because I think that you'll find that our values and our hopes for our students are shared. I think we have a lot in common, and I think we can build on that. And I think that if we all of us, come to the table with open hearts and open ears, there are solutions. And now is a time solidarity for the college as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I have been here 22 years now, and I'm a full-time faculty member. I was a department chair for 7 years and also a dean of liberal arts for 5 years. And you've probably noticed a theme here, and I'm going to continue along the same lines. I want to support my fellow faculty members and department chairs and directors to be a part of the union. To the college that should they not be allowed to be part of the union, that quite a few of them are willing to step down, which would cause a great problem in leadership. And more to the point, as I think Robert mentioned, the incentive for faculty to step up to be department chairs as a result, I think will be nil. And I wouldn't want to see that happen at this college. I love this place. I've been here a long time, but I would like to appeal to the board, to the president, the administration, to the union. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've also been here 22 years, and I was chair of a department for 6 years. And I'm basically saying that I support what my colleagues are saying. But I'd also like to say that if chairs and directors are excluded, and those people who choose to stay in those positions or who are willing to step up, I'm sure administration has thought that those people will then demand an administrative contract. That if they're told they're not faculty, contract with a commensurate administrative pay. So my feeling is administration can't have it both ways. They can't say you're not faculty, but we're not going to pay you as an administrator. And I would appeal to the administration, as my colleagues have said, to do the right thing, because excluding these people, all it does is make things more divisive. And we've already gone through some very divisive times, which is not good for anybody. That's it.
Thank you. That's it. So that's all for public comment. Thank you for joining us tonight and for your comments. Next on the agenda, the President's report, awards, and presentations. President Grissom?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. We'll start. And tonight, the Pass It Forward Award, Veronica Hernandez nominated Linda Pena from Data Entry Clerk in Financial Services. So, Linda, come on up. Veronica's not here, is she? Congratulations.
So, thank you. My name's Linda Pena, and I work in the third party and accounts receivable coordinator. So this award is such an honor for me because I take a lot of pride in my work. I always try my hardest to do the best that I can in everything that I do. And the support that I receive in the finance department allows me to be part of a great team, and they encourage me to keep moving forward.
Thank you for all the work you do, Linda. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And the Wildgram, Valerie Grimley nominated Behzad Dayani. Behzad, I saw you out there. Come on up.
Valerie just sent me a statement. She was not able to be here tonight, but she said Behzad is always a great help when it comes to scheduling the Contract for a Better Tomorrow luncheon and the Native American Club meetings and events. He always greets you with a smile and makes sure that you are happy with your food order and service. I believe he deserves this award because he is a great supporter of campus activities.
Good evening. I just want to thank Valerie for nominating me, and also wanted to say that the last 18 years that I've been in this position, it has actually been a pleasure and an honor for me to serve all the students, faculty, and staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I just want to highlight a couple of things in the written President's report. Yesterday, or Monday, I was at the American Association of Community Colleges Conference, where Santa Fe Community College was named the Climate Leader of the Year by AACC and Eco America. It came with a nice plate that's in my office, but it also comes with a check for $10,000 that we will use for professional development opportunities for students and staff and faculty in the sustainability area. At the Regional Skills USA competition, East Wing Eatery sous chef Kyle Pacheco got first place in culinary. Welding student Frank Trujillo got first place in welding sculpting, and Michelle Harding took third place in commercial banking. And both Kyle Pacheco and Frank Trujillo will compete at the Nationals in Louisville in June this summer. We're going to recognize Student Writing Award winners tomorrow night at Collective Work Bookstore. We're excited about that. We had most recently had our Native American Week, and as part of that, we looked at our data, and we have a 34% increase in Native American students since 2013-14. And sneak preview, I know many of you saw it, our Science on the Sphere project. from the state, as well as some money raised by the Santa Fe Community College Foundation, has been installed and is in operating. We're not fully opening it yet, but we're using it, I think, in some classes soon, and we'll be doing some more grand soft openings to raise a little more funding for it, and we'll do a grand opening somewhere this summer. I think the rest of it I'll just leave since we've got a pretty full agenda for tonight.
Thank you.
Vice President Peters, you want to come up and do the enrollment report?
Chair Keith, President Grissom, board members, I have given you the enrollment report and just are up just a bit in head count, very similar to what you all saw last month, and down in credit hours. That means that we have more students, but the students that we have are not taking as many classes. And that is likely because they have work that calls them away from campus and keeps them out of the number of classes that they had been taking before. I would call your attention to the longer report, just to mention that when you look at student type for degree seeking and student type for non up, you'll notice that there's 4% missing, and that 4% are students who have not yet identified their status. So that's the reason for the discrepancy you see there. Any questions?
Could you clarify the dual enrollment?
Yes, dual credit students are students who are in courses that for which they are gaining high school credit as well as college credit.
Madam Chair, if I could just, for George Gamble, who's our new person, concurrent enrollment are high school students that are enrolled but just for college credit. So they're not getting high school credit at the same time. So there's two types of high school students that could both are getting high school credit and college credit at the same time.
Right, any questions from board members? Any other questions? Member Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to remind folks that last month we talked about and had a presentation on the scheduling task force. I think that's what it's called, is this task force, okay. Lots of ideas, including some from other states about the impact of scheduling on enrollment, which of course is what this. So I asked at the time if we could put that an update on the agenda for next month, for May, if we could. I'd like to know what progress has been made and what ideas that the task force has come up with and how we might be able to assist in facilitating that.
Certainly, I'll be glad to do that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you,
a lot.
Board Member Sullivan.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I just have one. I'm looking at our handout that we got during the work session about out-of-state students. And this report on residency status has 455 out-of-state students, but it seems like our chart might indicate more.
Madam Chair and Member Siegel, we had two charts. One showed for the whole year, which was over 800 students, and there was another chart that showed about 400 each semester, fall and spring.
So this is a semester.
This is just this semester.
Just the semester, and this is the whole year, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you.
That concludes my President's report.
Thank you, President Grissom. Next, communications, the Faculty Senate report. I start by saying thank you for the minutes of the faculty Senate meetings. We have a nice thick stack of them.
That was my first comment today, was first to apologize for the problems earlier this semester with getting the minutes. We've implemented new procedures to make sure that doesn't happen again. But I want to make very clear to you that that still doesn't stop the fact that the minutes that you have up to now are still from, we've had two meetings since then, which we have not had the time to approve the minutes to get them to you in time for your packet. So I'm going to start out by a report from the April 7th meeting and the April 21st meeting. And then if you have questions about the other meetings, we can get to that as well. April 7th, we had reports from the Higher Learning Commission meeting that we sent one of our Faculty Senate representatives, Julie Deisler, to, and Jill Carlson also came. Faculty concerns continue to come up over the faculty qualifications. And one of the things that's come up is that while we understand there has to be compliance with the HLC, it seems as though there has not been enough national conversation about whether this is actually a beneficial good thing. There's some very qualified people who have a lot of experience teaching who are now going to be denied teaching or put on a track where they'd have to invest considerable time and money in advancing their education. And I think that we have many examples where it's problematic at best. We have people who have been studying, who their degrees are interdisciplinary, and it's really not clear where their graduate credits would lie. And so it almost implies that you couldn't really have interdisciplinary studies any longer because who's going to be qualified to teach it? So the innovation beginning of new fields of study are all, anyhow, there are a lot of problems, and the faculty are having an ongoing conversation about that. We're going through a process to comply with that right now, and signs are that things are going fairly well, but we do still have concerns about better teaching faculty. And I've been hearing this story for many years from colleges across the country, so this isn't unique at all to Santa Fe Community College or our faculty. It's been an ongoing problem across the country. Julie Gallegos also gave us a report on the course scheduling. And so there were lots of ideas about that and how much actual course sequencing is part of the challenge, that maybe students are often not getting good advising or trying to take the courses in the wrong order. And perhaps the course is offered on a timely basis if they took the courses in order, but if they wait till the last semester, that course may not be offered. So there's a lot to that, and the faculty seems very engaged and very that problem. And people do seem willing to teach evenings, teach weekends, do what's necessary, but really to focus on what the students need in order to keep our enrollments up. On the April 21st meeting, we're in our election cycle, so we are seeking a new secretary and a new vice chair, and so those elections will be happening later this month. We are concerned a little bit with policy review because for the last two meetings, we had some scheduled policies we were looking at, and we were told that we can't consider them because they're under being reviewed by legal. And so what we're concerned about is May 5th, our last policy review subcommittee is next Wednesday. Right now we have nothing to review, and we don't want to be a part of holding up the process. We're very interested in reviewing all these policies, and the truth is that those who are represented in the union only represent about 10% of the faculty. And so the Faculty Senate is a much broader body, and we want to make sure that we're very engaged in all of the policy development. We hope that if they do not come to us by May 5th, that we'll be able to hold that off until the faculty come back in the fall semester. that the policy review process has been challenging at best. And we'd like to see, as we move forward in our next phase of policy review, that there be a much more collaborative process, perhaps through the Governance Council, to begin to set the agenda and the timelines and the processes that will get the policy through. Having worked on the policy review subcommittee, I will say that most of the recommendations and the input from some very dedicated and very detail-oriented faculty have not been to benefit the faculty, but to create better policies. And I think if you speak with the administrative representatives who have come forward with policy, they would agree that it's a lot of just making the language better has really been our drive, and we're very interested in that. How these will be reviewed as a group, perhaps in the Governance Council, so that we can come with a better process. It's not, a lot of times it feels like we're under a lot of pressure, and we'd really like, we can't always do as good of a job as we'd like. Yeah, we'd like and more time to review these things. The Faculty Senate has requested, and has not always been granted, a minimum of 2 weeks to review any policy before it comes before the Senate. And we don't think that's an unreasonable timeline, but it's not always been afforded, and we'd like to make that a regular part of the policy. As far as the chairs and directors question, the chairs are a collegial rotating role and from the outside it might appear as though a chair is a stepping stone to an administrative position, but from a role of responsibility to help facilitate department operations, with hope that someone else will step up in the future, that we can get back to our true passion, which is teaching. Overly professionalizing chairs could interfere with that seamless rotation between the faculty to fill that role. Removing chairs from the union represents what is broadly seen as a disincentive from people stepping up and to fill that role. If chairs are not faculty, it also raises a question, what are they? Are they staff? Are they administration? Faculty Senate has always represented chairs and directors as faculty and intend to continue in that role. The alternative raises a lot of questions that we think there are few answers for. So we hope that we will consider removing that objection before it will be out of the hands of the faculty, the administration, or anyone here to make that determination. Do you?
I
Okay.
couldn't get the communications.
Okay.
Communications at Faculty Senate, but Faculty Senate created a statement that you all received this weekend on your emails, on your SFCC emails, except for Linda, you have a different one. So we were going to read it today, but
If they've all received it.
you've all received it. So we wanted that to be in the record as well. That was the statement that Faculty Senate came as a collaborative effort regarding chairs and directors.
And I think we can have that included in the minutes.
Mm-hmm. And it will be a part of our minutes when we submit them before your next meeting as well.
I'm sorry that I was going to read them, but there's disadvantages to having a communication at the Faculty Senate email. It doesn't come up on your phone.
So having said that, are there any questions from the board about the Faculty Senate report or the minutes that we've submitted?
Thank you, Zuby. Questions? Any questions from the? So just a quick question. I really appreciate your thoughts on policy and how we can make the process better. As you know, it had been a long time at Santa Fe Community College since we've reviewed policy. So this is kind of a new process that we started 2 years ago, and we've really had to go through every policy and look at them. So there is a lot of work on the table. There's a lot of work on the table for the governing board who's reviewing of work coming through. So that being said, the process that we've used the last couple of years is designating a schedule at the beginning of the year. So in September this year, at the beginning of the school year, we put out the schedule of what all the policies were that were going to be considered this year and kind of what order they would be considered in. That order was prefaced on which one of those were the most urgent. So in other words, we have some policies that federal law has changed and our policies need to change to reflect federal law. And we needed to do those very quickly and move them along because the college was in fact out of compliance with our current policies. So that was really the order by which we have done those. If you have a better idea of how that works in the future, I mean, pretty much we've given a year's notice of what's going to be considered in that year so that everybody has the heads up of these are the policies that are going to be reviewed and in what order. But if you have a, proposal for how that process works different, once we get through the entire suite of policies, then it will be more of a trickle than it is now, right? So we'll then have a regular schedule, we hope to have a regular reoccurring schedule to do those on a one-by-one basis. Much fewer of them a year than we're looking at right now.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, I'd just like to make a comment too. I've been at every Governor's Council meeting. No suggestions on a new process have come forward. I would love to see suggestions for a new process, so bring it forward. We'll look at it. Also, any of those policies that we have delayed because legal is looking at, I'll bring them back up until faculty returns in the fall.
And I think mostly what we would like is, as the board is drafting a schedule, if we could just see the draft and give comment before it becomes part of the record, then we could give our input on what we might see as potentially being problematic. And we're not looking to slow anything down, but just to really we may have some important input on the schedule and how that, and what might be problems or loggerheads that could be created in that process. But we do appreciate that the board, everyone's worked very hard on it. I think very good results from all this policy review have come forward, and I think that looking at it a little at a time, and I suspect we'll see in the fall, faculty senate, staff senate may be wanting to bring policies forward themselves as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
could you give an example of something that was problematic this year?
Well, there were a number of times where drafts of policies were not available to the Senate until 3 days before the meeting that we were supposed to pass them at. And the Senate had requested that we always have a week and a half at minimum so our committee can review it, then send it out to the entire faculty body with recommendations, receive input back from the whole faculty senate body, have the committee review it a second time and make final amendments before it comes to the Senate. Because when we're getting 6, 7, 8, sometimes policies of the whole. And so our policy review subcommittee, I think, has been absolutely stellar this year, but giving them enough time to do their job, I think, is really critical.
Thank you. So just another quick question for you on the HLC qualifications on faculty. So we discussed this at the work session tonight too, and what an issue it is for the college and for many of our faculty. So what is the national conversation? I mean, what I heard you say was nationwide that it seems like there's a lot of pushback on the HLC rules. It's my understanding that we're kind of already, those have been passed, they're in place, and we're in a honeymoon period right now before they take effect very quickly. Level to amend those.
Well, I think the sense of what I've been hearing from people for many years, I mean, we're kind of at the tail end. These things were passed quite some time ago. The sense is that these policies came down and there wasn't a lot of push, but everybody has been looking from the beginning of how to comply with them as to, instead of evaluating, is this the best way to go forward? And I think that the faculty see on face value why it's problematic. An engineering faculty who's been teaching physics for 10 years but doesn't have 18 credits of graduate physics, who is now suddenly, although they're the best physics teacher at the college, is now not teaching physics because they don't have the qualification. Clearly they were qualified. If they had many, many more credits, instructor of intro level physics, probably not. And so I guess what we would like to see is maybe just every administration, college across the country, a little more pushback and saying, hey, this is not necessarily working. Could we relook at it? Could this be reviewed? Is there a possibility that we could look at that the idea was good, but the implementation is turning out to be much rockier and much more problematic than had first been anticipated. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that the HLC would be open to hearing that feedback. But we send one faculty member there and we can give a little bit of feedback, but generally there aren't that many faculty at these meetings, from what I understand, who have that perspective.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from the board?
Well, my question would be, is that a role that the faculty can play with the HLC?
That's a very good question, and we're exploring that. I've had some conversations with people at HLC, and it seems to me from some of the conversations I've had that there may be some disagreement within the organization of where this is going to, and so there may be openings. But I think right now, because of deadlines and everything going on nationally, everyone is much more focused on complying instead of bringing back feedback on how this is problematic, and so they're not getting enough pushback. And I think they just really need to hear example after example of why this may be and maybe possible proposals as to how we could do it differently.
Which role y'all could take?
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, I think that'd be a great role for faculty to take. We have to focus on compliance though, because we have to be accredited. And, it's my understanding that the HLC is actually the last of the regional accrediting bodies to implement these qualifications. So it's not like it hasn't happened in other parts of the country, but there's no reason why there can't be a grassroots effort to try to look at it. And so I would encourage faculty to take that role.
We'll bring it forward through our governance process here and have conversations. We look forward to having that conversation with the board, with the president, with the staff and everyone.
And with the HLC.
And with the HLC, of course.
Yeah. Thank you for your report.
Okay. Thank you.
Senate report. Here's Barb.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, President Grissom. It's nice to see you this evening. So far, I think we've been keeping up fairly well with our minutes. We did have an extra session that was sort of unofficial during the Professional Development Day, and it was more of for the people who weren't familiar with Staff Senate, it was an opportunity for them to come and hear what it is that we do, why we feel we have an important voice on the campus, what are some of the efforts, issues that we were trying to tackle at the time. We did have some new attendees, so that was encouraging. We have seen our participation drop a little this semester, and I think it's just everybody's been incredibly busy. And I think the change of our schedule this year was a little troubling for some folks. And our meetings always seem to fall on the day before a holiday, which people tend to scatter. But we have a couple of our meeting minutes in there. I'll take questions on those at the end. I just wanted to discuss a couple of the other things that we've been working on and that are coming up in future meetings. We've recently submitted our Title V application, and Yash Morimoto is going to come and talk to the Staff Senate about that proposal. We have a scheduled presentation from Jill Carlson, also related to the conference that they attended for the HLC and the gleanings that they had from that event. We have seen the policies sort of dwindle down, and I think we have one scheduled for our next meeting. We're right in the midst of our officer election. We have two positions open. One is the co-chair, and another is the secretary's treasurer position. Unfortunately, our nominations didn't come in as we had hoped, and so we're working hard to put a slate of candidates together and to present those at our next Staff Senate meeting, which will be on Monday, May 1st. We did recently approve a change to our bylaws, which did modify the terms of those positions, so we could have staggering elections similar to how the Faculty Senate conduct their elections. And so we would have some continuation of projects that are ongoing, and we wouldn't have an entirely new slate of officers come in every year and have to start over from scratch. Another event we're working on is a staff appreciation event we're hoping to put together in May. We had done one last year, and it was a year and a half ago in December, and we were trying to do something a little bit different this year and got a little bit delayed on what type of event we were going to hold. So we realized the semester is quickly coming to an end. The graduation ceremony was moved up, I think, a week this year, and so we're probably going to be doing it the week after graduation, which will be at the end of the semester, and hopefully not too many of our staff will have scattered by then. We're also going to be looking at our summer schedule. We've realized that even though we are here working during the summer, we have a lot of attendances down. I think last year we had one meeting in June and one meeting in July, and we're going to revisit that and see if we want to just take the summer off or continue that schedule. And we have a subcommittee that's currently working on the charter that will be presented in relationship to the salary step matrix proposal and the work that we're moving forward in that direction. And so we finally got a group of folks together to work on the charter because we were having trouble making time for it in our regularly scheduled meetings. That group is going to have 3 biweekly meetings and then present to the Staff Senate at the end of May. So that's pretty much where we are today. Is there any questions that you have for me?
Any questions from the board? For your report, much appreciated.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is student government report. Do we have anyone here from student
Madam
government?
Chair, we don't have anybody here tonight. Mark Conda, who's been the SGA president and served on our board, has resigned his position as SGA president because he got a job, and it interferes with his doing the extra duties. The interim president, who was the vice president, could not be here tonight because there's a class on Wednesday nights, and we're still trying to figure out whether he's going to join the board for the remainder of his term, which is just through July. They did have new elections, and I met today with the outgoing officers as well as the incoming officers of the Student Government Association, so we will definitely have a new representative. They do have several minutes that are in here at this point in time.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda, consideration of the consent agenda, which includes minutes from the work session of March 22nd, the regular board meeting of March 22nd, matters related to SFCC policy, and final readings and approval of 5 policies.
Madam Chair, we need to remove policy 2-22 from the consent agenda. We have a change from the discussion earlier today.
And this is the new copy we just got?
Yes,
on our,
yes.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion on the
Removing 2-22.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So next on the agenda is item 2-22, student sexual harassment policy.
Madam Chair, members of the board, in the discussion today, we actually took a sentence out at the end of the policy overview and inserted a new version of it as the first sentence under scope and applicability, and that sentence now reads, "This policy prohibits sexual harassment of students or anyone else. This policy applies to all college students and prospective students." And I believe the other highlighted area was the change we made from the first reading.
Do I hear a motion on the amended policy, 2-22?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, now that I look at this again, this policy applies to all college students and prospective students. I don't know how we have any authority over people who aren't our students yet. Or does that just mean students can't sexually?
Madam Chair, I think I would read it both ways. So it applies to students on campus and prospective students on campus, as well as other students harassing prospective students.
Okay. Because we really don't have any authority over prospective students.
Well, other than not allowing them on campus.
Yeah, right.
Well, but we have authority of people on campus.
Yeah.
And prospective students who
Are on
are on
campus.
campus.
Yeah.
So
So we
the
can't-
anyone else would cover that.
So we can't really do anything to them if they're not, well, I guess we could throw them.
Yeah. you
Okay,
can throw 'em
that's
out.
fine.
Any other discussion? Not, motion is made and seconded.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Action items. Approval of financial report.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just one question. In our packet on C24, which was the same part of tab C, was the new definitions of executive team and employee.
Yes.
And I see that here on the agenda that, that's part of the consent agenda, and we did discuss that today. Is that a resolution, or is it just, it's not a policy? I guess I'm just asking, what is that?
Madam Chair, members of the board, what we want to do is we're going to go now, and every place where those two are defined in policy, we're going to change the wording to match this policy. So basically, this definition for employee and executive team now goes in the glossary, and it'll go into every policy that we've previously passed that might have had a slightly different definition.
Okay, so we're
Cleaning up our definition.
institutionalizing the definition in each of the policies.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Approval of financial report for March 2017. Mr. Tejas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, President Grissom. In front of you, you do have the financial first for the third quarter ended FY17. At the end of March, we had total cash in bank with both of our bank accounts of $10.6 million, and $5.7 million of that was in our operating account. You can compare that to $4.9 million the prior year for an increase of about $752,000. Tuition and fees are up 5% at $7 million. Local appropriation revenue is even compared to last year, and that is at $11.2 million. State appropriations are down 8%, and that would be $637 compared to the prior March. These are down 1%. If you look at total expenses, they are up 1.7 million compared to last March. That's primarily related to 3 payrolls that occurred in March of this year, when we had the 3 payrolls hit in April last year. And so that is why you'll see compensation up 1.6 million, 9%. Supplies, expense, utilities, equipment are up about 140,000. We reviewed these earlier in the work session, as well as in the Board Finance Committee, and on Monday with the Financial Oversight Committee. And with that, I can stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from board members on the financial statements for March 2017? So a quick question. When you look at our financial report and see that we have more cash in bank at this time this year than we did last year, and then we talk about tight budgets, which we're in the process of passing a budget for next year. Will you address that for us, of why we would have reserve and then be talking about the fact that we have a tight budget?
Well, Madam Chair, we have a total of $5.7 million for SFCC is about $1.2 million. So we have, a couple of those every month. So monthly, our payroll costs are about $2.4 million. Again, I refer back to the $5.7 million in the operating account. In that account, we also use that cash for purchasing goods and services for the college. So while it might look like a lot of money at the right now, and a $752,000 improvement, it's really not a whole lot of available cash for payrolls scheme of things. I think that we've done better this year. I'd have to do a thorough analysis to find out exactly why we're 752 up, but I would say that we've done a lot better in terms of our grant receivables. And I would have to go back to last year to look at what that was like at the time. I think that we're collecting those and doing a good job of making sure that we limit the amount of those receivables. I know that both myself and the president have communicated to the executive team that, we have tight budgets, so we need to only purchase what we need at the college. Those are my thoughts, President.
Well, I think we talked about reserves too. So we actually only have about $1.7 million, 1.5 payrolls. And so we've talked through the financial oversight committees over the years about having a goal of having 3 months worth of reserves, which, our cash goes up and down because we get those huge influxes in December and January and then again in June. So we really need to continue to build our reserves for in case something happens. And so I'm not comfortable with having just enough reserves for 1.5 payrolls. We really should have 3 months worth of expenses, which will be 6 payrolls plus regular operating expenses. So we need, we really ought to have between $7 and $9 million, in my viewpoint, in reserves to be safe. We've been slowly building our reserves up since we had our financial situation in 2014.
Any other questions from board members on the financials? If not, do I hear a motion on the March 2017 financials?
Move to accept the financials.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the FY17 financial audit contract.
Madam Chair, board members, President Grissom, we are at that time of the year when I bring the financial audit contract for the current fiscal year that will be audited and due to the State Auditor's Office November 1st of this year, 2017. We start the process now. The state audit rule through the State Auditor's Office requires that a contract be approved by the board as well as our internal SFCC policies. We require that the governing board approve all audit contracts. And that's why I'm bringing this to you. If you remember back to April 27th, 2016, the board did approve a contract with Axiom CPAs and business advisors for a 3-year term. The audit rule requires that that contract gets approved annually. So while we entered into a 3-year contract with a particular vendor, and the state audit rule 2.2.2 NMAC. With that, I think that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
As I understand it, then, this is the same amount, the contract amount is the same amount as the current year's audit contract.
That is correct. When we negotiated, Madam Chair, Board Member Siegel, when we negotiated this contract with this vendor through an RFP done last year, we did ask that the vendor hold their cost flat without any increases, because it's very common to have the vendor do the first year here, and then because of inflation, they charge a higher amount next year, higher amount next year. So actually, with inflation put into the mix, it's cheaper. This year's audit is cheaper than last year.
And that audit amount is $88,000?
It is $88,000. It's actually $83,000, but there's about
Plus gross receipts.
$5,000 and so some dollars for gross receipts taxes.
And the foundation audit is included in that?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Member Gamble?
Some reason not to approve a contract a second year, or put another way, Are you completely satisfied that they have been doing a fine job?
I'm happy with the services, Madam Chair, Board Member Gamble. I am happy with the services. It's always a challenge to have to do an RFP for an auditor because the state auditor has to allow you to do that, and I think they do that they allow you to go out to state competitive bids right around February, I think. I think it's in March. And they give you just a little time window to actually do that proposal, get it done, get the board to approve the contracts and all that. So it's not that easy to do. So we do want to, go into a multi-year negotiated contract with the particular auditor, especially if they're going to hold their fees.
But otherwise, you're completely satisfied that they're doing work that you approve of?
Well, they're auditors, so we're happy with their services.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
And Member Sullivan and I served on the board audit committee, and we were involved in the initial meeting, the exit interview, and heard numerous reports throughout the time period of the audit about things we were doing, had been doing well, and a couple of the tweaks that we needed to do. So I feel as a board member that I'm very satisfied with the professionalism of that group.
Move approval, the audit contract.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries.
So Mason, bring up the one I gave you that says FY17.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the state budget approval request,
Madam Chair?
otherwise known as the BAR.
And this is bar number 2. Madam Chair, I'm going to kick this off and let Amy and or Nick add some details and respond to questions. Every year we have to submit a final budget adjustment to the Higher Education Department. We have to make sure that our revenues and expenditures are in line with where we think we're going to end up at the end of the year. So this is that adjustment. You see on here this chart, you see the original budget that was submitted last year. You see what the total adjustment column is. And that includes the adjustments we took in bar number 1, which was primarily that $507,000 decrease in state funding that we had to do at the end of November. And then in the final column, these are the final numbers, our best estimates at this point in time for revenues. This is our adjusted beginning balance from the audit that was completed after bar number 1 was completed, and then we've estimated to our best abilities the expenditures in each of the exhibits. Once again, we have to be conservative on our expenditure estimates because we cannot go over in expenditures. That would be an audit finding. You can always go over in revenues, and that's okay. But going over in expenses is not okay. So we talked about this in great length Friday, yesterday, and today. So if you'd like to ask any questions to go through this.
Any questions from board members?
Madam Chair and President Grissom, if I may, could I add a little bit?
Sure.
I would just like to add a little bit of the history from where we have been up till now, because this is the bar that would adjust our budget through June 30th, FY17. And a lot goes into this budget just because many things going on. So if you look back to the bar in FY16, we did a bar, and the governing board approved that bar. And you compare that with our original budget in FY17. The college had a 3% cut at that time during the beginning of FY17 for our original budget. That amount was $280,000. Then in October of 2016, the legislature met in special session to address some budget issues as well. And they implemented another cut of 5%, which was the $507,000 that President Grissom just mentioned there. Of course, in 1 year, which totals $786,000. And now for FY18, we need to do this budget adjustment to get to that point. Currently, that approved legislative budget, which was vetoed by the governor, was another 1% cut. And I think that's kind of where we are right now. A lot has gone into this bar, a lot has gone into developing the FY18 budget, beginning way back to end of January of this year, February. We did compensation analyses, and I want to thank Amy publicly, very much so. She has done an enormous amount of analysis on the financials and the budget for this bar as well as the upcoming FY18 budget. So thank you, and a lot of work's been gone into it.
Let me add to this. So the bar includes both unrestricted and restricted funding. And so you saw in the work session those two sets of papers in the format that has to be presented to the higher education department. But it does include the restricted, which is where our grants are, our public services is, and our student financial aid. And that's the primary thing there. So in all cases, we have to estimate revenues, put in beginning balances if there are any, estimate expenditures, and come up with a projected ending balance.
So a question about the state requirements. When is there a date by which this bar is due to the state? May 1st. Any other questions from board members? If not, do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the bar number 2.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. And thank you for all your work on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
In a moving world where the target keeps moving.
Okay.
Next on the agenda, the consideration of a declaration of a bona fide financial emergency. President Grissom, do you want to?
Madam Chair, members of the board, speaking of a moving world, uncertain time with no state budget for the college. We fully anticipate that there will become some state budget for the college, but we don't know how much nor when. So we are requesting that the board declare a bona fide financial emergency that will allow us to deal with what is an unknown at the present time and take actions as we have to take actions. Right now, because we do not know our state funding, we're kind of out of sync with some of our policy requirements. And so we can't make those changes now and stay in full compliance with policies without declaring a bona fide financial emergency. We are trying to do as many of those things that would be required if this had been the normal process, but we're at a point date coming forward. The request is to do this. As Vice President Tass said, we've already taken an 8% cut. I think we're going to take another 5 to 7% cut. A 14 to 15% cut over 2 years is a huge loss in state funding. It's impossible to offset that with tuition increases, which impact our students, and there are just no short-term ways to raise those revenues. So we're going to have to make some very tough decisions here in the next few weeks in order to get together a budget for that starts on July 1st.
So I have a question, Madam Chair. So what are the steps can take when we officially declare a bona fide financial emergency? What does that enable us to do that we couldn't do if we don't do that?
It allows us to make decisions that for which it is past time per policy to have made those decisions for next fiscal year. It allows us to, if needed, to enact reductions in force and closure of programs without going through every item that's specified in policy. partially because, once again, we're out of sync from a timeline standpoint. We're still going to try to do most of those steps where we can, but we don't know what we're going to have to decide.
Right.
Time, and for me, the biggest reason for a financial emergency.
So, would you remind us kind of what are the terms around being able to declare a financial emergency?
This is our own definition. So our own definition it means an actual or impending immediate financial crisis as determined by the governing board that threatens the continuation of college operations under the current structure. Having no budget from the state for FY18 fits that category.
I guess so.
And President Grisman, Chair, I understand that unless we make some of these decisions, we have a budget, who knows whether it's in July or August or September, we will be too late to really affect the way we go into the next year.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that's correct. If we don't make some decisions now, we've already committed to the summer expenditures. We are doing less this summer than we have in some summers. Once we get students and everybody registered fully for fall, it makes it very hard to make changes for the fall. And if we take another 5 to 7% cut, it would be almost impossible to absorb that all in the spring semester. And that is our concern, and as I talk to our peer institutions around the state, that's all of our concerns. This uncertainty is preventing us from planning semesters.
So, Madam Chair, I would move that we declare a bona fide financial emergency at this point.
I would second that.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Member Sullivan.
How long does this remain in effect? And I ask that because I'm always hesitant to change or to affect a change in policies that we've just spent 2 years wordsmithing and not know how long that'll go. And of the temporary Army housing at the Santa Fe College campus that was built in the 1940s, and if you've ever been there recently, it's still there. So that was the temporary housing, and with no end date. I think I'm a little nervous to go along with approving this. So, President Grissom, what would the end date of this be?
I'm open to suggestions on that. I guess my suggestion right now would be to make it go until the August board meeting. Canceled because we've recovered, or it'll be extended because we don't know what our funding situation is. I think that would be pretty much in time for the fall semester to make some changes possibly. But
so that would be 4 months then.
Correct.
Is August sufficient time in your observation, or do we need to go to the end of the semester?
I don't have a problem with making it shorter and then asking for an extension if it's needed. I would rather come back and have to revisit it because I don't want it to be ongoing forever, as Member Sullivan has asked.
70 years.
Well, I would add that to the motion.
No, I agree.
Madam, I'm still having a little trouble getting my arms around the immediate need for this. We don't know, of course, what will happen in the legislature. We don't know what will happen to the lawsuit that's been filed by the Legislative Council. And we do know that the state has to have a budget by July 1st. And we just finished approving budget adjustment request number 2, which finalizes us out through the end of the fiscal year, through June 30th. And through June 30th, we're pretty well, and congratulations to the staff on this, where we projected we would be. We're a little down, but that's all within the percentage of projections. So through June 30, we're okay. Now the question is, what happens after June 30? And that's the $64 question. So perhaps, President Grissom, you can respond in a little more detail. Why do we need to do this now?
Well, Madam Chair, members of the board, I'll just reiterate what I was talking about before. There's some decisions if we don't make them now, we won't be able to make them until after December. So we will not, and then we'll only have one basically semester to absorb cost or any cuts that we don't know what they're going to be at this point in time. So I'm just trying to set the stage so that we can make decisions if they need to be. Otherwise, we have to do the public notice, bring everybody back together, and get everything done. We will be talking about a draft of the budget in a later item today. But I think this just gives us the ability to do some things that it will be very hard to do without the declaration of a financial emergency.
And a follow-up to that, Madam Chair, and why would it be that we couldn't do these until after December?
Because we will make a commitment for all the fall classes, and the bulk of our expenditures, supplies, whether they're staff, we have to have everybody in place to deliver courses over the summer and the fall, and you can't cancel it once it's started.
Okay, I understand. And the things that are, as you indicated, important as a part of these implementation of required actions, as you say here, are potential program closures, potential reductions in force, and other, I guess, financial steps that you might take. Would you take those steps prior to July 1st?
Yes.
Know what the budget or what the funding from the state would be?
Yes, because if we don't make the decisions before July 1st, we won't be able to do them by fall semester. When we get to the budget thing, I'm going to talk about some things. We have got to structure the college for what we think the future is going to look like, which is going to include continued state funding at best of getting back to what we were this year, which is still $1 million or $2 million less than it was 2 years ago. So the options of getting new dollars from the state, I think, are very minimal, at least for the next 2 years.
Madam Chair? Obvious action to take, and I believe that at this point we don't have any choice. And I think it's due to many factors. The declining enrollment, which every college and university in New Mexico and all over the country has experienced after the recession, and people in every state except ours started going back to work and getting jobs. But the fact that our budget in New Mexico is so unstable. The legislators and the governors, prior governors, this governor, have known that we are two active industries, the oil and natural gas revenues. And when those plummet, the revenues to the state plummet, and when that happens, everybody gets cut. Every department in government, public education, higher education, corrections, health department, everyone is cut. And for the last 2 years, for higher education, one of the most important programs that a state can provide, to have experienced tens of millions of dollars of cuts to their programs, where everyone has had to do incredible belt tightening, laying off people, closing programs. I don't see it the following the legislature and very closely following the budget. We've seen public education, which is 44% of the total budget of the state of New Mexico, 44% of our declining $6.1 billion state budget. And they took about $50 million in cuts in this session. And it's impacting all of us, and it's not going to end. If the legislature is successful in their lawsuit, which only the first hearing is May 15th, we're not going to know for a while with the Supreme Court what the actual decision is going to be. Are we going to see the funding levels for higher education put back into the House Bill 2, which is the big budget bill? Are we going to see the money for the legislature put back in? If that happens, we still have a deficit with that existing budget, and there are still going to be cuts somewhere. And higher ed, being about 15% of the total state budget, is going to be on the chopping block at some percentage level, some unknown percentage level. And we can't go on just it'll be a miracle, and we'll be able to end this activity, but I don't think that's going to happen. And we need to do this to have the flexibility to keep serving our students at the highest level possible. And we don't really have that many places to cut. When a school like ours with a $40 million budget loses $800,000 within a year and a half, that is significant, and all of you are feeling that in various ways. So we, unfortunately, I support this. I believe that we have to look at some really hard choices in downsizing, right-sizing, whatever the Republican vernacular is, although this is wouldn't be my choice, to make sure that we can keep providing the quality education and we can keep serving the students of our community who so rely on the college. I mean, we're going to graduate 877 people in May. That's incredible. The work that you all are doing is really resulting in people being able to go out there and get their degrees, get jobs, get certificates, get jobs. And it's working, and we can't jeopardize that. And so we have to make some hard decisions. And so I support this vote.
Madam Chair.
Member Sullivan.
I appreciate that, Member Vice Chair Siegel. President Grissom, what are other colleges doing? The Santa Fe New Mexican just reported on Northern New Mexico College substantially increasing its tuition. We're proposing a modest increase in tuition and fees, which I think you'll discuss later. Are all of these other colleges, all of whom are feeling the hit, doing bona fide financial?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Member Sullivan, I don't know if they're doing bona fide financial emergencies because I'm not familiar with their policies and how they may be written. I do know that every college I've talked to is talking about program closures, is talking about layoffs, reductions in force, are talking about tuition increases. And it's varied around the state. The universities are worse off than the independent community colleges because they have no local tax base. So, 60-70% of their budget comes from the state. The rest comes from tuition and fees and grants. I do know from our peer independent community colleges that I've seen some schools that are increasing tuition $5 and $6 as well as increasing other fees. I've seen some that today's paper, Northern is going up 4.5%. That's 4.5% on a much higher tuition rate than we currently charge. And I know New Mexico State has been talking about a 6% tuition increase. I don't know what they're looking at in terms of fees. I have not heard anybody that's sitting back and doing nothing. I do know there are some institutions that don't know if they're going to be able to keep the doors open with some more budget cuts, some of our smaller institutions. And some of our institutions would not be able to stay open for more than maybe a month if there is no state budget come July 1st. Our best estimate right now, if we got zero starting July 1st, we could probably pay our bills and make our payrolls through September without making drastic changes. So that's part of what we have to be concerned about. In other states, you shared some information with me from some other states. There have been states where they don't have a budget for a period of time. And that means you have to operate off of your reserves or borrow money. Well, we have two problems. We don't have enough in reserves, and in New Mexico, we're forbidden for borrowing money. So we don't have very many choices other than either drastically raising tuition or making some cuts that some of which we have to implement now, some of which we can actually make some decisions. This is what we're going to do if X happens, but we need to have those in place. And I don't know of any other way to solve this. I do know that CNM did an analysis that if they had to replace their lost state funding with tuition increases, they would have to increase their tuition to about $200 a credit hour and maybe cut back on the size of their institution to in half. We did a quick thumbnail sketch today, assuming we didn't lose any students, and that's not a good assumption. It would have to raise tuition to over $100 to 300%. We have to raise to over $155 to offset the loss in state funding. If we did that, we would certainly lose lots of students. So, we'd really probably have to raise it higher and have less students. If you've got less students, those students, whether they're support offerings or academic offerings. So it's a really tough situation to be in at the present time.
Madam Chair, I wasn't suggesting that we do nothing. Far be from that, because we all know, we all see the bull in the china shop, and we've got to take some action. I was only trying to understand if a bona fide financial emergency is necessary to take those actions, and whether other colleges have done that. And again, my only concern being the stripping out of policies that form the base of the operation, and that can be minor or that can be major. We won't know until all of the facts are known and we reach that point. So that's where I'm having some fear and trepidation about doing this, because, and I may be incorrect on this, that it seems to me if you have policies in place that are operative in normal times, that those policies be operative, if not more important, in lean times. Because more people are going to be impacted, and they're going to want to have a say in the process. Already the president has reported that in some of his meetings with the staff and faculty, their attendance is much higher than it's been in the past. People realizing that the financial horizon is somewhat ominous. So that's my concern is that unknown of what we're doing here vis-a-vis the policies. And I don't know, President Grissom, that you can provide any more, but please do if you can, any more comfort factor in that regard.
Madam Chair, members, I don't know if I can provide a more comfort factor, but it is spelled out in our policies. This is what we do unless the board declares a bona fide financial emergency. So it's in the policy right now that should you get to this point, you can do a different step if the board declares a financial emergency. Like I said, we're doing many of those steps anyway. Part of our challenge right now is we're past the date at which we could do them. And so if we have to go by policy, that means some of the recommendations we may have to be making would not be able to be implemented until next April 1st because we missed the April 1st deadline.
And the
Written in policy for RIFs and different types of situations.
Oh, once a year, April 1st?
Yes,
Oh.
for certain types of employees.
I see. Okay, so, well, thank you very much for that clarification.
Member Gamble.
In a climate of great uncertainty, and of course all of us are talking about it and recognizing it, it seems that searching for flexibility, how do we adapt to it? And I kind of have one question, which is what mechanisms, what strategies do we have for adapting to that uncertainty? And what I hear, one of the things I hear, is this statement is one way. It's one strategy that does give us a little bit of flexibility. My question, and maybe you've already answered it, Randy, is are there any other strategies that we might consider that would give us some flexibility in addition to this this statement of emergency, which I think is a very good idea, and I think it's a good idea for several reasons, not simply because it gives us flexibility, but it kind of shares with the public, our public, that we really have a crisis and we're trying to deal with it, and it's one way for us to express that, and perhaps that also will have some impact on the public and their communication with our legislators. But the question I have, and again, I'm supporting the idea of the declaration of emergency, but I'm just wondering, are there any other strategies? And maybe Jack was sort of getting at this by asking, what are other colleges doing? Are there other things that we could do that might help us?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Member Gamble, the statement out there to our community that there really is a crisis is a key point of doing the declaration. You know, it's really hard to come up with a lot of flexible options when 75 to 80% of your budget is salaries. So it's really hard to make huge changes at that point in time. The only one, and we discussed it at our work session on Friday, we discussed it a little bit yesterday, is the idea of furloughs. Furloughs give us some flexibility. If we build some furloughs into our budget, which at the present time I'm not recommending, those are things we can back out of. Just because we say we're going to furlough people X number of days, and should things you can't back out of so easily. But we really, you know, every person I talk to, other institutions, public schools even, everybody says try to avoid what you can impacting people's salaries that are going to still be working here. Everybody is having to look at layoffs and program closures. Most are looking at furloughs, but furloughs hurt everybody. And it's a real challenge how you do that. So that's the only thing I've been able to identify that's a flexibility issue. You know, I think there's two things we got to do, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later, is we've got to address the immediate crisis, which is an unknown amount. Structure ourselves for the future. That future includes needing to offer programs that we don't know what they even are today. I mean, the world keeps changing on us. And if we don't have any new money coming in to offer those programs, then we're going to have to do something to restructure our current organization to free up dollars to bring in those new programs, whatever they may be. And otherwise, we just, you know, people are always saying we don't want to change. Well, if you either grow and move forward, you never stay the same. You go backwards. And so we've got to set ourselves up for the future, which we don't know what it is. And then, you know, and we don't know what our funding is. We don't know what the in the recession, they didn't come back. Careers went away, not just jobs. And so we're still learning, you know, what are the new jobs of the 21st century, and
coal mines.
The challenge, coal mines.
Member Siegel, you bring up a good point, and Madam Chair. There is chatter, and I don't have much information background on what will happen with the federal government, but as you well know, there is the chatter that there could be a government shutdown on Friday. Mm-hmm. So that I wanted to just, in the back of my mind, kind of blaring. I don't know how likely that is, but in terms of what Santa Fe Community College, as well as other higher education institutions, are facing right now with that complication in the mix is just striking. So we don't know what's going to happen Friday. I think we're all hoping for the best. However, that's just an additional complication.
But, and thank you for bringing that up, because should that happen, we would likely have to furlough our federally grant-funded employees because we have no way to pay for them. And, you know, that becomes a little easier to do if we've declared this emergency. There's just, you know, the number of unknowns out there right now is just incredible. Just incredible.
Madam Chair. Go ahead.
Member Romero.
I really appreciate the comments from Member Gamble and Member Sullivan about the uncertainty of not knowing and the ambiguity that creates for all of us. One of my constant concerns, however, is to think about how do we maintain the quality that we are known for with our students in an environment where our funds are completely dissipating and or almost complete, well, for the moment, seem to be completely dissipating. Hopefully some of that will get restored. But we continue to have the challenge about how do we right-size this institution, knowing that even if we get a budget, which we all certainly hope happens, and that gives us a little bit of stability, we have to be thinking about how do we, for the future, think about what this institution has to do in order to maintain the quality that our students have become accustomed to. And so I think that one of the things we have to do is continue to think about that. And, you know, if by some miracle we get, you know, funding that we don't anticipate, that'd be a great problem to solve. And we can back out of all kinds of difficult decisions if that should happen. But lacking that, I think we're all concerned. I think, you know, we all read the newspapers. We all know what's happening, that we are facing as an institution. You the notion of closing down these institutions of higher education, which is really where we're heading if this continues to be a downfall. If we continue not to think about all of the work that you do as an investment for the state, then, we have so little choice. So this is a hard pill to swallow. I think we all appreciate that. And it'll be easy to back out of it if we have that opportunity. But facing what we are facing, I don't think we know that, and we need to be prepared to make some hard decisions.
Member Siegel.
And in response to what are some new ideas, I think that we have one that we'll be talking about in the very near future, and it's looking at our bonding capacity and in our community, and perhaps taking some of that bonding capacity and putting it towards operational. That's, it's not going to solve everything, but since our community has been so incredibly supportive of this institution for the last 30 plus years, I think it's a possibility which we will be exploring, but it's not an immediate infusion of money, which is what we need right now.
We generally take concerns under public comment and not from the floor. So I would encourage you to share what you have to say with board members after the meeting, and we are all open and willing to listen to that.
Call for the question.
Second.
Question has been called.
Madam Chair, you have to vote on the question.
We do, but we don't have a motion on the floor to call the question on.
Yeah, she just made a motion to call the question in a second.
I don't think we have a motion on the declaration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a motion and
A motion and a second.
we had a motion and a second and a revision.
Our discussion was so long.
You forgot.
It was intense, not long, it was intense.
It was intense, thank you. So all those in favor of the question, say aye.
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 All those opposed? So we go to an immediate vote. The motion on the floor is a motion to declare a bona fide financial emergency through August 1st, if that's the right date. Member Sullivan, that was your amendment?
I think he said the August board meeting, which would have been at the end of August.
End of August?
End of August. So August 31st.
Yeah, August 31st.
August 31st. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the approval of the faculty compensation for FY18.
Madam Chair, this is one of several items that we do need to just approve to get them in place for next year. The recommendation is to leave the current full-time faculty salary matrix and adjunct faculty salary matrices or schedules in place for the current year, and due to the lack of funding, any full-time faculty under step 10 will not move up a step this year.
Is there any questions? A quick question. So when we are being asked to approve the faculty salary schedule, does that include both adjunct faculty and regular faculty?
Yes, it includes the two schedules in your book on E11A and 11B. So there's a schedule for regular status faculty salary schedule and for adjunct faculty salary schedule, and they would remain unchanged next year from the current year, along with no step increase for full-time faculty below step 10.
I move approval.
Motion is made. Do I hear a second? Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, the next item is the approval of staff compensation for FY18. Similarly, with the absence of any new funding, I'm asking approval of the continuation of the staff salary schedule as well as the miscellaneous wage and salary schedule, with the exception of, because of the increase in the living wage for Santa Fe County, the minimum wage will be adjusted to $11.09 on the miscellaneous wage. That change will impact grades 6 and 7, where we had to do some adjustments to the minimum and the midpoints.
Any questions?
I move for approval.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the salary staff compensation schedule. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, the next item is the approval of tuition and fees effective with the fall schedule in FY18. As we've had numerous discussions over the last, recommending an increase in in-state, in-district, and in-state out-of-district tuition of $1. That would bring in-district to $48 per credit hour, in-state but out-of-district to $60 per credit hour. We're also recommending an increase to out-of-state tuition of $30 per credit hour, plus we are going to remove the waiver for the first 6 credit hours, which means out-of-state students will pay $143 per credit hour for all credit hours taken. The senior citizens by law rates has to stay the same at $5 per credit hour. On the required fees, we're recommending that the service be increased from $6 to $7. That's a $1 increase. That the Student Government Association fee, student activities fee, and technology fee stay the same as in this current year. And that on some other fees, that the fitness center fee be increased by $25 to $100 per semester, and that we implement an art facility fee so that a $25 fee would be applied to all lab courses in the arts area. It's a new fee, and it would apply to all but the fine woodworking classes because they've already implemented it in their revised syllabi.
But we declared it already.
Any questions? I have a question about the fitness center fee that I wanted to ask quickly. So does that apply to all students for access to pay that, or just the students who are taking fitness classes where they utilize the fitness center?
Say that again.
So the fitness center fee, the $100 per semester fee, does it apply to all students on campus as a matter of being able to use the fitness center, or does it only apply to those students who are taking fitness courses and utilizing the facility?
You cannot use the fitness center unless you're enrolled in a course, either credit or non-credit, and it applies once. So if you take 6 courses, you only pay the fitness fee once. So it really is a facility usage fee that goes to everybody, but nobody can use that except someone enrolled in a course.
Okay, so it's a facility.
The fee that the people can take a $50 a month pass like you do at a fitness center. But our $100 fee plus whatever cost of the course you take is really covers you getting into the fitness center for about 4.5 months. So it's from the beginning of the semester until the beginning of the next semester. So it goes through the semester and until the next semester starts, except for when the campus is closed.
Thank you for that clarification.
Madam Chair, that's a fee, not a tuition increase.
That's correct. That's a fee. So that only applies to somebody who is taking a course that would use the fitness center. And the same is true of the art facility fee. It'll only apply to students taking those particular courses. We do, just as a reminder, we do have course-specific fees, which cover things like supplies, or especially in the healthcare areas, the pass-throughs for the background checks, the drug tests, any other kind of check that those people have to do. Those are on course-specific fees, and those are approved by the president on a recommendation, usually through the deans and curriculum committee.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Member Sullivan?
Just a comment that, of course, the increase in the fitness center fee will have an impact on a number of seniors that use that, because that's one of the most popular facilities on campus that seniors. And many of those seniors also vote on bond issues and so forth. So my request to those who do appreciate the facility is that please bear with us. We feel your pain. We know that you appreciate the college and what it's doing for the community. And if we have a bond issue in August, please vote for it, regardless of this facility fee. But we have to do something, and this is what the administration has recommended. But I just did want to make a point that it has a more substantial impact on seniors, probably, than it does on other students in the campus. But I think maybe they're willing to step up to the plate in that regard. If they're not, we'll find out in August, I guess. But thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to build on that and say that I'm one of those people that go to the fitness center regularly, and I like to emphasize to my colleagues there that $5 a credit hour, they're getting such a bargain that in the least concerned to add another $25 for the semester. And they, for the most part, they do realize that. They do realize that it's really a bargain. It's a wonderful facility at a very discounted price.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion, questions? Do I hear a motion?
I so move.
Motion is made to approve the agenda as presented for tuition and fees for the coming school year.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? In terms of discussion, President Grissom, would you address any concerns you may have with the increase in out-of-state tuition, which is the largest increase that we're proposing?
Madam Chairman, members of the board, we discussed at great length our out-of-state tuition is much lower than most institutions in New Mexico. There are some institutions in New Mexico who do maintain that waiver and charge the in-state rate for the first 6 hours. There are some that do not. We are really trying to set the stage for recruiting more out-of-state students into some of our online programs as we try to expand both the number of courses that are available online, but the total number of programs that may be available online. It is something that we will have to watch to see if the effect on the out-of-state students enrolled. We did look at our data. We do have students who pay out-of-state tuition who have Santa Fe addresses. It's hard to tell whether those are temporary addresses or if they've actually moved here and are waiting to establish residency, which takes a year, and the residency situation is defined by Higher Education Administrative Code. So there's not a lot we can do in that respect. But this is one of the areas that we need to grow our enrollment. Our out-of-state tuition is lower than in-state tuition in many states. And so we think there is an opportunity to recruit students to Santa Fe Community College. And in fact, as we discussed at the last meeting with our new partnership with the Seattle Film Institute, they will likely be buying most of the gen ed credits for their students from us to be delivered online for their students that are back in Seattle. So it's a real opportunity for us to grow, but we needed to get the amount up to a more common standard.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, Madam Chair, next is the budget for FY18, and you have a budget on there. Bringing up on the screen, we've been talking for days about this. I do want to talk about what we have up on the screen. On the screen here in those first three columns where it says FY17, that's the final column is the bar number 2 that you just approved earlier tonight. Then the next three columns are three different budget scenarios for next year, FY18. The first one would be if we got the amount of funding that was originally in House Bill 2 that has been vetoed, which would be a 1% cut in state funding. And then the other two scenarios are a 7% cut in state funding and a 5% cut in state funding. On the revenue side, we've assumed all the other revenues would stay the same in any of those categories. The only thing that changes between categories. When you get down to the expenditures area, you'll see the expenditures are the same in all cases. But the base budget, the starting budget for FY18 that we've put together is basically assumes FY17's final bar. And then we have some additions to that budget and some deletions from that budget. The additions to the budget that we're recommending totaled about $545,000. We'll go over this in detail tomorrow at my conversation with the president, with the staff, but there's about $49,000 related to accreditation expenses for both the college and some of our programs that are going through accreditation next year. There's keeping the iBest program going as the grant funding for that disappears. It's proven very successful in getting students to graduate with a certificate along with, in many cases, their high school equivalency. We have to move our medical directing position from a 9-month to a 12-month position. We have a new person who was hired last summer, and for a variety of reasons, it was a 9-month contract, but it needs to go to 12. We've heard on many occasions that we really need to bolster our distance learning capabilities. We've got to make sure what we're doing is of a high quality and also meets the ADA compliance standards. And we've looked for grant funding to support this, and it's been unsuccessful. If we're going to grow distance learning, which in my opinion is one of the few ways we have, and frankly, offering programs that we may not have enough Santa Fe students to justify, but by bringing in out-of-state students, we may be able to justify those programs. We need to hire a director for our distance learning program, and we'd like to bring in for half the year a manager, a quality matters manager, which is a national standard for certifying online courses. In the area of lab techs, we have 3 techs that we would like to hire. 2 of them are currently budgeted and paid out of temporary funds that we would move to permanent funds. Those are in film and in the sustainability trades area. And then 1 would be in culinary, which will help us with a lot of our inventory issues. And we will be hiring that person in lieu of filling a 3rd full-time faculty position, which has been vacant for over a year now. We have our automotive program, which we've gotten started, which has about 80 students in it at the present time. We did not budget for the amount of supplies we would need, nor did we budget for the lease because we didn't know where the program would be. We do now have a lease facility, so we do have to budget for that for next year. We already know that our property and casual insurance is going to go up by $4,000. We know our health insurance premiums are going to go up. We feel comfortable that we have room in our fringe benefit rate of 33% to cover that for the college, but the employees who are covered under our insurance plan will have to absorb their share, as well as the increased deductibles and co-pays depending on which plan they're in. We have to increase our legal fee budgets by $50,000, which is basically restoring what we cut out last fall. We've got about 6 positions that are currently, some portion or all that position is in a grant that is ending, and we need to keep those positions, these 6 positions, so we need to move that to institutional funds, and we need to budget for an election which has a cost of about $75,000 should we have a special election for a bond election and or a mill levy election. So those were added to bar number 2 to end FY17. What we took out of bar number 2 to create the base budget is 7 positions that we have frozen that are either vacant currently or are becoming vacant due to retirements that we already know about. So our plan is we would not fill those positions this fiscal year. So with those additions and deletions, if you look at the bottom of the page in each of the columns there, we have to end our budget year with at least a 3% ING fund balance. Under the House Bill 2 scenario, which is the white scenario there in the middle of the page, right now, if we don't make any other changes to the budget, we would end up at a 2.07%, $2,000. We're short $310,000. The next set of columns, if we had a 7% state cut, we end up at a 0.25 ending ING fund balance, and we would have to find another $919,000, or $929, I can't read that right now. I think it's $919. And if we had a 5% cut, we'd have to find another $727,000. Now, those dollars we need to find can be a combination of increased revenues or decreases in expenses. By approving the tuition and fees that we've done tonight, we will anticipate some increase in tuition and student credit hours next year. I am concerned. We put that forecast together before all the uncertainty came up. I think all higher education institutions in New Mexico are concerned that with all the uncertainty, we may see less students because they don't know if things are going to be there for them to take or to finish. So that's the concern. I want to read a statement real quick before I ask Yash to come up and present some data. This is going to be a little bit of a repeat of some things we've already said, but I think it's important to get this on the record. Over the last 4 years, Santa Fe Community College has made tremendous strides. Our graduation rate has increased from 11% to over 20%, a very good percentage for an inclusive open admissions community college. The college and our students have received numerous awards and recognitions, most recently being named the American Association of Community College and Eco America's 2017 Climate Leader, and 3 of our students, as I said earlier, placed at Skills USA. And tomorrow night we will be recognizing a number of students at our Student Writing Awards. We've attained these accomplishments and many more through the hard work of our faculty and staff and through the determination of our students. And we've achieved these results during a time of declining revenues. Now, as we prepare our FY18 budget with many uncertainties, it is imperative that we stay focused on our students need to be on supporting those students who are seeking a degree or a certificate leading to new employment, advancement in their career, or for transfer to complete a bachelor's degree. We do have other students, but I think our first focus needs to be on those. The college eliminated several non-academic programs and positions as a result of a financial shortfall in 2014. Over the past 5 years, we have flattened the organizational structure, eliminating positions We've eliminated one vice president, one associate vice president, 2 deans. We've restructured departments and reassigned duties when positions have become available. We've become much more efficient by making better use of our IT systems, and we've implemented cost savings through the use of things such as renewable energy and improved contract negotiations. And in the contract negotiations, we've saved tens of thousands of dollars already just this year. Also, in 2014, and again this year, due to the 5% reduction in state funding, non-academic staff members took on more responsibilities as vacancies were not filled. Once again, we've identified vacancies that will remain vacant and a few positions that may need to be eliminated through a reduction in force. And in spite of all these implementations, in the past 2 years, we've had to ask students to assume increases in tuition and in required fees. And sadly, tonight, we've had to do that once again. Next, we must review all of our academic programs and make some governing board, and tomorrow with the college community, we will share our analysis of all current credit programs. This analysis will focus on outcome measures such as enrollment and fill rates for classes, as well as financial measures such as gain or loss per enrollee, cost per student credit hour, and cost per award. In addition, we will need to identify programs to be considered for teach out and eventual closure. Our task forward is, best we can, we need to anticipate more budget cuts from the state. We've already seen, as we've talked about, 8% cuts over the last 2 years, and we're likely to see more. We need to figure out a way to increase our reserves, as we talked about earlier, out there. It's going to take several more years to reach our target. And we need to structure the college for the future. And everybody kind of talked about this. With declining revenues and declining enrollments, the college must review all of our offerings and make some difficult choices on which programs are no longer viable and how to make room for programs to meet new workforce needs. Students, faculty, and staff will all have to contribute to solving the problem and preparing for those opportunities in the future. And it's a future that's unknown. Now is the time for the college to deliberate these issues through our shared governance process. Everyone should participate. Working together, we will find the best ways for education for our community. I want Yash to come up and share with us the spreadsheet that looks at all the academic programs. We'll talk just a little bit about it. We'll go over in greater detail. And then I am going to ask the board to table action on the FY18 budget until we can have a special meeting on May 10th. And that will allow, after the conversation tomorrow with faculty and staff, for us to get feedback from faculty and staff on their thoughts on some of the actions that we need to consider and make recommendations. So if I could let Yash step us through this spreadsheet.
Madam Chair, just before that, I just got a tweet that there will be furloughs beginning shortly.
5 days? Did you say the 5 days?
In 5 days?
She was talking about 5 days between now and the end of June.
Yeah, 5 days.
Madam Chair, before Josh starts with his always cogent presentations, on the budget spreadsheet that the President just had up, my understanding is that built into all of those 3 scenarios, there is a $250,000 contingency. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to be sure that we don't have it as a separate line item, but so that we know that we do have a contingency built into that. I believe that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's less of a contingency than we budgeted into last year's.
Madam Chair, members of the board, actually we started last year in our budget preparation with a $500,000 contingency, but we had to lower it to $250,000.
Okay.
Because we couldn't make it work. We really wanted it to be closer to $500,000.
So these 3 scenarios all have built into them a $250,000.
That's correct. That's
okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chairs, members of the board, President Grissom, in front of you is a set of indicators that could assist the college in making determination, a very difficult determination about the future for the college. That every single credit program is included in this particular spreadsheet. Keep going. So both a degree producing program as well as programs that offer general education requirement was included in this analysis so that the campus as a whole could sort of see a number of different indicators and how does that look like. So the first column, once it goes up, okay. The first column looks at the total enrollment as of FY 2016. And so that enrollment is classified, or not classified, but defined as number of students enrolled in classes. So if a student's enrolled in 3 classes and counted 3 times, this is not a distinct count because many students take more than 1 classes. If the level of enrollment is in the bottom 20%, in this column it is highlighted in red or pink, as you can see. The next 3 columns looks at total student credit hours, estimated revenue, mostly based on tuition and fees, the cost, and then we move on to the next items. The next 2 items looks at the top 10 in terms of, or the bottom 10 in terms of how much cost there is to the college in terms of gain versus loss and gain versus loss per enrollee. So the gain versus loss for the first column under this top 10 category is calculated by looking at the estimated revenue and the actual cost to derive the end of FY 2016 total gain loss column. The next column, the 2016 gain loss per enrollee, then combines that information and looks at the cost per enrollee. And so if for either one of those columns, if the cost or the total loss is in the highest level under the top 10 category, then it is highlighted in red. The next column looks at, the next couple column also looks at data from 2017 fiscal year. And so what this does is that it looks at 2 years so that it's not just a 1 year of snapshot, because it's possible for a program to just have 1 bad year and improve the next year. However, the data in the 2017 is as of, I believe, beginning of April, end of March. And so it's not the end of the year, but still, you could still use the same categories to see what that might be. Similar to the earlier FY 2016 data set. We look at the same categories under the same particular rules, guidelines.
Yeah, let me just chime in there. So
Sure.
in 2017, really the only thing that's going to change between now and the end of the year is more expenses.
Yes.
There's really no more enrollments, and there's really no more revenue because students have enrolled for the courses. Expenses, both salary and supplies.
Thank you, President Grissom. So the next, what color is that? I'm not sure. It's light green on the screen, so that I'm just going to call it light green. Maybe it's teal. Looks at number of certificates and degrees that those programs are awarding to our students over the last 5 years. If you could, the lighter greens look at the 5-year average course fill rate, 5-year average student success rate, which is defined as students earning C or better, looks at 5-year average student audit rate, and looks at 5-year average student withdrawal rates. And you can see on the top, if you hold on 1 second, thank you. Which is on the top, marked, indicated in red, is guidelines of when a particular field is highlighted in red. The last 2 columns looks at cost per student credit hours and cost per award. The student credit hour is calculated based on looking at number of credit hours multiplied by number of students enrolled in a class. So a 3 credit courses with 10 students in it would be 30 SCH. And so we look at that SCH and divided by the cost to come up with a total cost per SCH. Now in this column, it is more on a sliding scale to see the darker it is, the cost is higher, the lighter it is, the cost is lower. Now it's important to point out that no program is really expected to make any money in a public post-secondary setting. So it's looking at it more of a sliding scale. The last column looks at the cost per award, and it's similar to the cost per SCH. It looks at the total cost for that program divided by the number of awards. So when an award is less than 1 year, it's calculated as a 0.33, 1/3 of award. If it's a less than 1 year, less than 2 years, but about more than 1 year, it's calculated at 2/3 of an associate degree. And then if a student earns an associate degree, then that's counted as a one degree. And so using those numbers, we're looking at the total numbers of certificates and degrees awarded divided by number of, by the. Now, if there is no degrees or certificate produced, then the total cost is put under the cost per award category. And so both the cost per SCH and cost per award is based on sort of a sliding darkness based on what the rest of the institution's programs cost per SCH or cost per award is. And I stand for questions.
So before there are questions, what I'm hoping we will be able to do is we share this with the campus community tomorrow, and then I will be asking for feedback through the governance groups, and so I'm going to encourage faculty and staff through their governance groups to make feedback as to identifying which programs we should consider for potential closure, and we will take it from there, and then bring a recommendation back to the board as we present a final budget on May 10th.
Just quickly, can you scroll down through all the programs? Just,
It's going to be a little bit difficult and confusing because of it's a big spreadsheet.
They're grouped by
program category and then by majors.
Madam Chair.
Member Siegel.
Is this the first time, Yash, that we have done this kind of analysis, or have we done it before and we haven't seen it?
This is the first time we've done this level of a comprehensive analysis to guide the institution's decision process.
But we have done pieces of it. Pieces of it are part of program review. We've never put together anything like this. We have looked at what other institutions have done and created our own version.
Madam Chair, I suppose this is it's a wonderful resource with so much data, and I guess the question that comes up is, how does one begin to weight these various elements in making a judgment? I believe there's no single column that would direct one to say, oh, well, let's do this or that. There are rather multiple columns, and certainly a number of them pertain to cost. But I would like to throw out there the question, not an answer, a question. How should we weight these various columns? What is important in considering all of this data and these various measures?
Madam Chair, members, Member Gamble, that's a great thought about is there's a mixture of outcome measures and financial measures, and some are a combination of the two. And so I think, at least on a first cut, I would look at the ones that end up in the negative or the red the most times as a starting point. You're going to always have to take other things into consideration outside of there. But to me, if you have a program with few students or few awards being granted, that's a concern. If you have a high-cost program with few students, that's also a different kind of concern. There are some programs that are very high cost, and if you go through this, a couple of them that'll jump out. Nursing obviously is a high-cost program, but you take the number of enrollees, it brings it way down the list. Hyper, which is the fitness center, is a very high-cost program, but you divide it by the number of people enrolled there, it brings it way down the list. Now, we don't have a whole lot of awards in Hyper, but it's a community offering. So we also have to factor that in. So there's a variety of factors that I think need to be in there. But at this point in time, Santa Fe Community College has very seldom closed a program. I personally can only think of one, there may be two that we closed. But other colleges have to do this. Linda nor I like, which is the right sizing. But we've got to make room for what could happen and could be needed in the near future. If we don't make some of these changes, we will not have any funds available to start the next program that is needed by our community and our students. So I would first start by looking at the program areas that maybe have multiple reds, not just one.
On that point, Madam Chair?
Member Siegel.
I think that, I've been a champion for our healthcare programs here for a number of years. And I think on things like that, we really have to look at what is the demand in our community and in the state for healthcare. There to be a nursing shortage, and so expanding nursing is always a good idea. So looking at workforce issues and looking at the number of what other schools, how many graduates other schools are graduating and where they're going to work, looking at jobs, those are really important. And also looking at those programs, which we've made a really big deal of, trying to attract young Hispanic men into our college, into these programs that they're really interested in and able to find careers and jobs, and that has been a focus. So there are just so many other factors than data, and the data is so important, and I'm so glad that we have that now, but we do have to look at so many other things.
Can I ask a quick question? If we scroll back up to the top of the spreadsheet, will you walk us through how we come to the cost or the loss, the gain loss number?
So this number probably is better explained by the Office of Finance, but I'll do my best. So the total cost is derived.
I could help if you do.
Thank you, sir. The total cost is derived by the cost that's associated in their budget items within the banner. Now, one of the things we've been doing over the last several years is improving our data integrity in the finance area. So in the past, we haven't been able to link the budget and expenses to each academic program. Thanks to the hard work of the people in the finance area, now we could do this for the first time. And so most of the actual cost is derived by salary and benefits, as well as the expenses relating to instructional costs. Then what we do is we tie that to individual academic programs. We then take the dollar amounts based on the credit hours of students, the actual tuition that students earned who are enrolled in those particular courses. And we subtract that tuition, against the total cost to come up with the gain-loss figure. But this only gives you a one-sided picture of the situation, as there could be a high level of students enrollment who's interested in this program. So in order for us to look at this particular challenge from a multiple perspective, we have a column that looks at enrollment figure, per enrollee figure. So what we do is we take that loss gain number and then divide that by the total enrollments.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing so, you could really compare apples to apples in terms of what is really the cost per enrollee, per interest of the community taking those courses.
Madam Chairman, let me add to that. So in the case of looking at the cost, we did take, because chairs are in one department, and allocate it to the departments that they chaired. So it's not all in the one department where that person has been primarily budgeted. We didn't have to do that for the directors because the directors are pretty much in the department that they're a director of. We did that. We also took the overload that we give to chairs who work on the 10.5-month contracts, and we moved that down to the pool level, so it's not even charged to any of the direct departments. And I was asking a question, and so the revenue is what came in for tuition and fees for those classes. And so the gain or loss, of course, is the revenue less the expenses. Most programs should lose money because we get subsidized by the state dollars and the local mill levy. Where you will see a few where there is a gain, and that's primarily because the person who is teaching that area, their full-time salary is somewhere else, and it's a related field, or there's only adjuncts teaching it, and the adjunct cost may be lower than the revenues that come in from tuition and fees. So you will see a few that will have a gain. It's somewhat of an anomaly, and they're mostly very small program areas.
Okay.
Generally speaking, it takes about 18 students in a class to cover the cost for about average adjunct faculty salary.
Okay.
And just to we have some that are bigger and some that are smaller. Some have to be smaller for accreditation standards, like the nursing clinical classes cannot be above 8. But our average is 13. The national average for community colleges is 19.
Yes, and that's actually not the class size, but the faculty to student ratio according to the IPEDS calculation. So according to the IPEDS calculation, our faculty to student ratio is 13:1. Our national average is 19:1.
For community colleges?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, if we're looking at the kind of funding that the state is proposing, an important thing to look at is the cost per award. How much does it cost us to generate one certificate or one, or however many graduations we have?
Madam Chairs, members of the board, for the past 7 years, the Higher Education Department has 7 years ago, the Higher Education Department changed their funding model from focusing on student credit hours to degrees and certificate completions. Right. And so I do support that notion that that's an important element to consider.
And Madam Chair, just to add to that, just a reminder, the performance-based funding, which currently is not a huge portion of our state budget, but there are states where it's 100% of funding, and there has been discussions of that here, is not only based upon the number of graduates and degrees and certificates, it does get enhanced if those degrees or certificates are in STEM or healthcare programs, and if those graduates are at-risk students. Right now, it doesn't amount to a whole lot of our budget, but it could in the future. We also do get one little incentive, which is momentum points of students attaining a total of 30 credit hours. So we get some momentum points when a student reaches that level.
So graduating at-risk students modifies the cost.
Yeah, it modifies the amount of money we get from the state for reimbursement. You know, we used to get somewhere between $250 and $450 per credit hour for students enrolled in programs, depending upon whether they were in Tier 1, 2, or 3. We don't get that anymore. We have a base budget, and then we get performance-based funding based upon those graduation numbers that we just talked about. And what the state has been doing is they come in and well, the performance-based funding is supposed to be any new funding plus they shave money off of our base budget and redistribute it around the state. Well, obviously the last few years there's been no new money, so they've just shaved off money from all institutions 2 and 4 year and redistributed it around the state based upon the performance.
So one of the things we need to pay attention to is not only how many certificate and degrees we award, but how many of those are awarded to at-risk students?
Correct.
In the cost per course and what our offerings our degree program, do we consider any grant funding, or is this just straight tuition?
Special appropriations.
Okay.
If they got grant funding, the dollars didn't show up in their expenditure column because it was paid for in a grant. So these are only the dollars that showed up in ING categories. So there are some areas where the salary of a faculty member may have been paid for in a grant, so it didn't even come in here.
So it would make the cost lower because it's being offset somewhere else.
Right. Or if we lose that grant, then the cost would come in higher.
Great chart.
Madam Chair?
A lot of work, thank you.
Member Gamble?
Again, this is just a wealth of data, and as I'm looking at some of it, I see the summary measures on the far right-hand side of the number of adverse indicators when sorted.
That's on your copy, but it's not on the one we've shown on the screen.
Okay.
We've counted some of those adverse, but we didn't want to prejudice the shared governance process, so when we take it to the groups, we're going to just share it in alphabetical order by program.
Okay. My point would be this. I would be very concerned about using that kind of summary measure because, once again, the weight of these various factors varies tremendously. One could, and we'd have to go through and kind of discuss what kind of weight we want to give to one factor versus another. The program has a number of adverse so-called elements would not by itself indicate that program is problematic, or at least.
And those are the kind of things that I would hope would come out as recommendations through the sharing process.
Member Sullivan?
I think the one thing that stands out to me is when this is presented to the faculty and staff and through the shared governance process, the first question I would ask is, in looking at how to prioritize these, or as Member Gamble says, how to weight them, would be, how much money do you need? You know, how much do we have to slice out of the budget? And of course, we just went through 3 scenarios in that regard. But nonetheless, we're talking about coming up with a budget meeting on May 10th, and I think that some thought has to be given to give the shared governance folks at least a bracket of how much we saw the 3 numbers at the bottom of those 3 options. Is that the number? No, that's not the number that we're going to have to cut out here, because we have revenue increases here, and we have contingencies. So I think some hard thought between now and 10 o'clock in the morning has to be given to what's our target number here, or what's our target bracket of numbers. Otherwise, you're just going to get a wild array of suggestions and recommendations.
Madam Chair, Member Sullivan, that's exactly what we're going to do tomorrow morning. Conversation is at 3 o'clock. Now, in staff compensation amounts that you've improved the recommended tuition and fees, we can now go back and figure out how much of these, how much we need to cut under these different scenarios, how much of that is covered by tuition and fee revenue increases, and then we need to finalize a target for what we want to increase our reserves by. We've got to increase our reserves. We can't get to where we want to go in 1 year. It's still a multi-year process, but I really think we need to try to increase our reserves by at least another $500,000, so we at least have 2 payrolls in reserve. That's not a lot, but it's at least 2 payrolls, so.
But I think you need to focus down the dialogue and have a target.
Right.
Everybody works with a deadline, everybody works with a target much more efficiently.
And we plan to do that
Tomorrow
or the 3 o'clock meeting.
3 o'clock. Be there.
And just remind everybody, some of you are here, some of you watching online, we've booked the room from 3 to 5, so if we have an overflow at 3 o'clock, like we did 3 years ago, we'll have a second one at 4 o'clock. Okay, so we will have 2 one-hour sessions if need be. That's also a good way to keep the various offices open, so have people come half and half if you want to get everybody there. It'd be great to have everybody be there tomorrow.
So I don't think we have a motion on the table.
Move to table.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to table this item. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the approval of property disposal. Mr. Tejas.
Madam Chair, board members, President Grissom, this agenda item is a request to approve this property disposal list. Normally, the college does 1 disposal per year, and we are required by state law 13-6-1 to have a state agency, local public body, state educational institution to dispose of these types of items, tangible property, things of that nature. Specifically, items that are $5,000 or less. Then we have to, if you do approve this, we would have to report this list to the state auditor's office as well as the state higher education department, and we'd have to wait 30 days before we actually did the disposal. As you can see in this list, there's a lot of computer IT equipment. Most of it is very old, with very limited current value. There's a couple of items here. One that we added is it's the first item, should be on your in your packet, in your handouts, and it's for the KSFR, or not KSFR, the SFCC radio tower. And we just added that on this list as well.
That's the updated list.
Yes, it was handed out just now.
And Madam Chair, I think one of the key things to look at on the new list is sorted a little bit differently. You'll see of all the items on the list, most of them have no value on our books. They're fully depreciated and probably have been for a while. And then of the ones that do have value, there's only about $28,000 worth of value still on our books.
Yeah, that's the value on our books, Madam Chair. There's questions as to the actual value we could get from the item, such as the smart car and the other, dental van that are pretty dilapidated.
Now, where are all these? These computers, these desks, these whatever.
Right now, I believe they're sitting in our general services department.
Some are in a caged area downstairs next to the dirt room, not in the dirt room. Some of the vehicles center. Yeah.
I love the Hewlett Packard.
Oh, okay.
We need room to walk.
And so, when we approve this, what happens to them? Are you putting them in a truck and taking them away?
We have several different options. The items that still have value, I'm going to ask our purchasing office to see if we could bid those out. So definitely the radio tower, we would put out
Oh,
a
yeah.
public bid for that. We would try to bid out some of these servers that have some remaining life on them to get some revenue to the college. Other than that, we are allowed by state statute to dispose of these items, and what we have been doing is putting them to auction. So we get an auctioneer and work with that vendor to end up auctioning off these things.
And they usually come in and buy a whole lot of the computers, and then they take them and do things with the parts.
Yeah. Okay.
These are a hoot.
Any other questions? Not, do I hear a motion on this item?
Move to approve the list for disposition.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
The list is approved.
Okay.
Almost
done.
Item 11, informational items of purchases over $100,000. None to report. We have no first readings of policy this board meeting, so the next item on the agenda is board reports, discussion, and other business. Real quickly, I just want to say under board discussions, an announcement that I wanted to make. Bernadette Jacobs has a birthday tonight. She just left us, but she sat with us for 3.5 hours on her birthday, so I just wanted to say happy birthday to Bernadette.
Now she's gone.
And Camilla Bustamante offered to sing to her, and she just left too, so maybe Camilla can sing.
All right.
Any other items from board members? Any reports? If not, we have 2 items on the agenda. So first, an action of approval of a resolution for election of officers and a slate. That is included in our briefing book as tab H, that slate. So the slate that is being recommended resolution would be for the board officers for next year as chair, Linda Siegel, as vice chair, Martha Romero, and as secretary, Jack Sullivan. New officers would serve through the April 2008 regular meeting of the governing board.
Madam Chair,
Member Sullivan.
you might scroll back to what we're talking about. There you go. I have a concern. I don't know who proposed this. There's no indication of it apparently is based on some historical way that the board may have occasionally operated in the past. The problem I have with it is, number one, we don't have a board policy on how to do this among the many policies that we do have. And number two, that it doesn't affect an equitable rotation of the board members through the positions. And could, in fact, deny a board member the opportunity to be an officer at all. I think that when we were young, we were all taught to share, and I think that that's a good policy when we're looking at board officers for a couple of reasons. One, it gives board members a more in-depth experience that that they don't otherwise get as members. And secondly, it allows the college to benefit from each board member's particular expertise and experience over the years. With this particular recommendation, we have a situation of one board member who was chair from 2015 to 16 would now be vice chair from 2017 to 2018 and would then be chair from 2018 to 2019. I just don't think that represents an open and transparent and useful mechanism for doing officer slates each year. And then I would conclude by saying that the resolution that's in here, again, not knowing where this came from, has a number of issues with it. And I think that it should be a policy and go through the policy review process, not a resolution. The board can certainly statutorily elect whoever it wants. The policy talks about rotation, which we're not doing here. In fact, it talks about it twice. But it's even aside from that, still leaves I think some issues out that should be included, not the given the authority to elect any slate it wants. You know, even if we say rotation is a great thing, that can always be a situation where rotation might not be in the best interest of the board or be as a part of the desires of the board members. But so my one recommendation would be that whatever is anticipated for this resolution, I don't think it should be approved. I think it should be go through the board policy process, just like we've done with policies. And secondly, some serious thought should be given to this this suggestion of rotating through, essentially based on tenure on the board, the same people through the officer positions until they either resign or are not reelected or die. And I don't think that's in the best interest of the college.
Madam Chair?
Member Gamble.
It was my understanding when reading through a variety of materials prior to assuming the position that these positions indeed just rotated. Know or recognize that the current slate did not do that. But indeed, it was my understanding that rotation was the guiding principle, and I would, wonder if that was mistaken on my part, or or again, I didn't understand that this particular slate did not reflect that.
So it's my understanding the language included in our background rationale of what has traditionally happened comes from our procedures book, from the board handbook. And included in that is this language, which is what has guided, because it's the procedures of the board, which is what has guided the rotation process, which calls for the most senior member who's not currently serving to rotate back on. So this is the procedure that the board has followed. That being said, I think Member Sullivan's point is well taken, that if we believe it should be in policy, we can take it out of procedures and put it into policy. and consider it and debate it as a part of the policy process.
Madam Chair, I just ask Donna a question. The resolution, I was just double checking. I was actually surprised. I didn't remember we did it last year. I just double checked to make sure it wasn't something that we have to sign and submit to the Secretary of State or higher ed, and it's not. It's our own thing. So we don't necessarily have to do the resolution. We can, as far as I know, we can approve a slate of officers however we want. The resolution itself is just something apparently we've always done.
What is the will of the board on this? Do I hear a motion on the recommended slate as presented?
Well, I'll be happy to move it, if that's appropriate. I don't know.
I'll second it.
So motion is made and seconded to approve the slate of officers as presented. Is there any discussion on that?
Madam Chair, I suppose given the discussion we just had, it just seems to me that standard rotation seems to be the guiding principle, and I don't understand that in this particular case.
So there's been variation from that in years before. This is nothing new. So
Well, I
in
didn't
the
realize
time
that either.
I've been on the board, Member Siegel, this will be her second rotation in as president, basically because she holds the seniority on the board of the election process.
So if there was rotation again, as I understood it, would this slate look different if there was just it would not? Yeah, again, I don't quite understand how the rotation is working. If Martha has served a year ago or 2 years ago and is coming up again, that suggests that there is not a even rotation. There's some, because if there are 5 members of the board.
So the rotation is based on seniority. Donna, do you have some clarifying?
The way that it was, Kathy Keith is the chair, the vice was not reelected, and the secretary was Linda Siegel. So with Pablo Cedillo moving out of the vice chair position, he would have gone into the chair position if this was a normal rotation. But because he was not reelected, Linda Siegel, who was the secretary, moved up to the chair position. And then the way traditionally it has been, the next board member with the highest seniority who has not been on the board for at least a year, then moves into the next position. So it is a rotation.
But Madam Chair, it's not an even or an equitable rotation. Between 3 people, as opposed to 5 members in the board. If it were to be an even rotation with 1 member out of context, then it would be the next individual on the board, which would be myself as vice chair, and then the following individual after that would be member Gamble as the secretary. Having, one person for 5 years in a row as in an officer position can't in any way be considered an equitable or an even rotation, in my judgment. I would be glad to look at this procedure. My understanding in reading the board handbook was that the board is governed A, by statute, and B, by board policies. So those policies are where I go for my guidance. And beyond that, I can only rely on my experience in other governing bodies, where just to take advantage of the benefit of the variety of personalities and experience you have on a board, which is what you like to have on a board, you rotate your officers through the process. As I said previously, that helps them understand the process, and hopefully that also helps the college in benefiting from that individual's experience. I don't see that we're doing that here.
I understand your points, but let's, so for tonight, we've got a motion on the floor. We do not have a standing policy. We have a procedure.
Do we have a copy of that procedure? Is there a copy? Do we have available? It would be.
Well, the resolution is what has been used.
I don't recall that resolution from last year.
It was there last year. It's been there every year.
Why would we have the same resolution every year? It doesn't name individuals.
Say anything about seniority.
Yeah, and it doesn't say anything about seniority.
It just talks about rotation.
It talks about select in rotation. It says, should any officer resign his or her office, the rotation process would be utilized to replace him/her. It doesn't say rotation based on seniority. Gender, or anything. It just says rotation process.
That last line is a little bit confusing. It is not compulsory that any board member participate in the officer rotation. So presumably that means someone could take themselves out of consideration?
Yeah, I can see that. That's a possibility, Madam Chair, where somebody might have a family situation or something, or a health situation where they didn't want to put in the time necessary for that, and they could say, I'm just going to have to pass on that this year for one reason or another, and that makes sense to me. But I don't read a procedure in this resolution, and I certainly don't that directs this type of an outcome. Did you find anything, Donna? Okay, well.
So the motion on the floor, is it to approve the resolution? Can I clarify that? Or is it to approve the slate of officers as presented?
The slate.
Okay, so for clarification purposes, motion on the floor is to approve the slate of officers that has been presented before us. If not, we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
No.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is discussion for pre-K for Santa Fe.
Madam Chair, is that a little premature since we don't know how the election is going to turn out on
This
March
was
2nd?
Sullivan.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I requested this under, well, anywhere on the agenda. It was put under announcements. Let me pass out something. You could pass that down. Should we have enough? More than a month ago, Mayor Gonzalez came to the board at a work session and talked to us about this pre-K plan. My reason for bringing it up this evening before the election and is not to debate whether it's a good idea or it's a bad idea. There's been a tremendous amount of publicity. I've got another one if you need one. Everyone got one? Okay. There's been a tremendous amount of publicity, letters to the editor and so forth in favor, and a great deal of money spent on both sides. That is not, I think, where Santa Fe Community College needs to be engaged at this point. Where we do need to be engaged is what is our obligation in this regard. I really didn't get from the mayor a clear handle on what we would be doing. Other than he was using the community college as a vehicle to help ensure that the community had a feeling that this program and these monies would be bad publicity for handling other projects. I didn't see a real summary until an article came out in the Albuquerque Journal written by Jeannie Oakes, who is the person that the mayor has been using to formulate this pre-K plan, and who has apparently a great deal of background, senior fellow at the Learning Policy Institute and so forth, in this particular subject. I've highlighted what I think are questions that we need to have answers to, and these really should be answered before May the 2nd, before we enter into any contracts with the city. First of all, there's a 5-part plan, they say. An early childhood commission is going to be established that will set policy, oversee implementation, conduct audits, and report to the city council and public. Okay, in the paragraph below, Santa Fe Community College will administer the program. Now, my first question is, what does that mean? It means, given the paragraph above, that we're basically a bookkeeper for the program, drawing on our vast pre-K experience and so forth. By design, it goes on to say at the end of that paragraph, the community college will ensure quality and accountability at every step. It seems like the chain of command here and the accountability is with the city council and this commission, yet we're being charged with ensuring the quality and accountability at every step. And I ask there, how do we do that? And who do we, the community college, report to? Do we report to this early childhood commission? Do we report to the city council? Or do we report to the Santa Fe Community College president and governing board? Who do we report to? And then it goes on with the process of how the community college will request proposals from various entities to provide these services. And I bring up the fact that, and make sure people understand, that this will not apply to entities in Santa Fe County. Santa Fe proposals. Now, Santa Fe Community College, of course, is an almost countywide organization and institution. So there's a little bit of a pushback there. The community college will package the recommendations and it will provide it to the commission, which will approve the package and report to the city council. Second page. Okay. They will receive the funds and the process will be entirely merit-based and non-political. And I am asking the question here, with the city council involved, how can one define this process as non-political? I mean, it's by definition, it's political. The bottom line, that in my experience over the years, as to who is in charge of this, is who writes the checks. So I would say we need to give some thought to who writes the checks to these providers that are selected to meet these 966 early childhood seats. Does the city council write the checks? Does the community college write the checks? Does the early childhood commission write the checks? And so forth. And then it goes on to say the program, quote unquote, without definition of what the program is, will coordinate its funding with federal, state, and other revenues. And so again, my question is, who is the program? In the next paragraph, it says the commission and the community college will specify outcomes. So, and metrics and tools. Again, we're dealing with a process here. Someone has to be at the top of the chain of command. Someone has to be in charge of doing this. And they will convene a workforce development board. And the second to penultimate paragraph there is the navigation support. Now, what does that mean? Navigation support to help families find good programs for their children. I think this is just super unclear, and I think we need to have a better definition of what our role will be in this, because our credibility, our 30 plus years of credibility in the community here is being used as a promoting force for this particular initiative. And in general, the commission seems to, the board, seems to feel that this would be a good thing, pre-K, and we're in the education business. Let's get on board. I mean, that was kind of the feeling I got from just the discussion when the mayor was visiting with us. But before we jump into the rabbit hole, I think there's a lot of unknowns here that we need to address. We don't have anybody here tonight from either pro or con side or from the city, so I really can't ask anybody questions to the board, and I guess ask that between now and the election day, if you discuss this with city personnel or anyone, that we try to get some clarification.
President Grissom?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to respond. First of all, the details will be in a contract should it pass, and should the city offer us a contract, and we will negotiate the details and the specifics of it. We do not have to approve it if we don't like it. Secondly, before I forget it is my understanding that although the money cannot go to centers that aren't in the city because it's city funded, the children could come from anywhere in the county.
That's correct.
So the services could be provided to children who live in the county, not necessarily in the city. I don't really see this any different than any other grant that we get, and I'll use the TACT award from the Department of Labor. We get $15 million from the U.S. Department of Labor. It's the Labor Department. We applied. We're awarded. We negotiated an agreement with them, and we subcontract with other colleges, just like we would subcontract with the centers that would get the fundings to expand the pre-K. And in that, we set targets, we set measures, we set outcomes. They have to be approved both by in this and us, and then we pass that along, and our subcontractor has to agree to those. So I don't really see that this is any different from types of grants that we've already managed.
And then in your example, President Grissom, who writes the checks?
The Department of Labor writes the checks to Santa Fe Community College. Santa Fe Community College writes the checks to sub-providers, and the sub-providers write checks to their employees and subcontractors.
And in this case,
it would be the same type of situation, except in this case, the grantor, is that the right term? The grantor is the city. We would be the grantee to manage the grant on behalf of the city. If we don't agree with the terms they provide us, we don't have to accept it. I'm sure there will be some negotiation there to some extent.
right. So if there's assuming as a number one tenant that in all of this, Santa Fe Community College is going to write the checks. So we've got the checkbook as one item. Suppose we come up with a different conclusion than the city council determines. Has there been any discussion as to what happens then? And just my experience with the city council is councilors change, positions change, things change. What happens?
Let me respond to that. I've had a conversation with the mayor after you brought this issue up. City council have to approve each individual sub-award from the community college. That it seems to me that the college should be approved. We should have to live up to the criteria. The commission sets the criteria. They may help us evaluate proposals. But then we should really come before the council once a year for approval of both what we did in the previous year and awarding of the contract for the next year. That would be what I would propose back to them. Now, whether that's what they end up offering us in a contract is another story. But that's how we do most things now anyway. So
I'm just concerned.
I would not want to take every individual contract to the city.
No, and that, that sounds reasonable to me. What I'm concerned about is this has become such a high, intense, with literally millions of dollars being spent on both sides of the issue. The beverage industry, former mayor of New York, and on, that we almost can't refuse the contract. We're losing, or we might lose a lot of our leverage in this if we don't get something. And I would suggest perhaps it would be useful if you could have the mayor follow up that discussion with a letter to you or a memo, or perhaps you could prepare a memo to him saying that to get your feedback on. The more that you can get on paper before you're committed, and if this passes, we're committed. I mean, let's face it. If we try to turn this thing down, I mean, we're going to not look good.
Madam Chair and Member Sullivan, I don't necessarily agree with you on that side of it. I think we can back down if the terms do not fit us and we're not happy with it. The college has not taken a stance on the soda tax. The college, though, has spoken that the concept of pre-K for everybody is a great concept for our community and could have lasting impacts on our community. Students 12 years from now. And so that's That's the only thing that we have been saying out there in public. It is something, though, that the concept is a natural fit for our Early Childhood Center of Excellence, which we have a complete business plan that we put together. It was presented to the board. I can't remember if that was before you came on the board or not. It was funded by the Brindle Foundation. And so the whole concepts of the Early Childhood Center of Excellence really fit right in with this initiative, and actually were part of the impetus for the mayor and his team to come up with a proposal. But I think it's premature for us to have too many more conversations about this, other than the fact that if it passes, I would be glad to entertain a contract from the city, and I would be glad to negotiate those terms, and you as a board will have to approve that contract at that point in time. It could be a whole moot point if the soda tax doesn't pass on Tuesday.
Absolutely. If it doesn't pass, it's a moot point. But, now we have the Catholic diocese on one side, and we have the beverage industry on another side, and quite frankly, we're being played very quietly, like a ping pong match here, and everyone is relying on the college to make all of this work. And I'm very nervous not standing with the proponents of this if it does pass.
So, President Grissom, do we have anything in writing with them currently that?
No, we worked on the draft MOU, which I did send to you after the mayor came and visited with us. Both the mayor and I just felt like, we didn't really need to do the MOU because that really would have tied us into the decision. Because of the controversy over the tax itself, we didn't want the college to get tied up in that. So we agreed that we did not want to pursue the MOU at this point in time, but that we would be open to considering a contract should it pass. So that's just pretty much where we stand at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my concern, and it may be back here, and I may say, I told you so, or I may not.
Any other comments from board members? Announcement of next board meeting. So we've talked tonight about a special budget meeting on May the 10th that we would need to add. The proposal would be 5 o'clock, which is kind of our regular meeting time for that meeting. Our regular May board meeting will be Tuesday, May 23rd. That's a regular board finance committee meeting will be May 23rd. Our regular board meeting, May 24th.
I think both Martha and I cannot make the meeting on May 23rd and 4th.
Option might be to have our May board meeting on the 10th and have it not only be the meeting on the budget, if we have one, but a meeting, a regular meeting. Or
Just I'll comment on that. Madam Chair, I think we could consider doing that. We would not be able to do April financials. The odds are that we're probably going to have to schedule another special board meeting sometime between May 10th and the June board meeting, if the budget situation ever becomes clearer. So I would not necessarily have a problem with saying that we will cancel the May 23rd and 24th meetings and have the May 10th meeting, and then know that we may have to schedule another special meeting. There's anything that we had to do on policies. There are no second readings to come forward. There's probably going to be no first readings to come forward. So I really think there's minimal activities for the May meeting other than your capital plan, and that could be ready because you're pretty much ready to go now, right? We'll try to have it ready by May 10th because we have to turn it in earlier this year because the hearings of the HED plans. We could work hard to try to get that done.
But we
I think we can figure out a way to get that done because it's really just a revamp of the current version. So we'll work with that.
And Madam Chair, we might discuss right away the bonding issue.
Yeah, that's part of what I can't really prepare a project calculus until we know what the funds are. Well, you could do just like you did last year. You put hypotheticals in it. But if we decide that we do want to have an election in August, we're going to probably need to have, if we don't have a meeting this week, we'll probably need to schedule a special meeting in early June.
The other option, Madam Chair, is that you can have the meeting, and the purpose of the meeting at the end, as I understand it, is so you have your current financials, and the secretary can How does that sound? Is it okay?
We just voted on board officers.
Well, we put it on the agenda and vote on it again. I'm just kidding, guys. It's late. It's hard to get good help around. I'm telling you, it's just, well, it's just no comedy sense here.
Linda's the incoming chair. She probably needs to decide what she wants to do.
As far as
The next meeting. You chair the next meetings.
May 10th.
Yeah, May 10th. So we're just going to announce that the 24th is canceled?
Yeah.
Because we will likely have to.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We're going to likely have to schedule a special meeting. So right now, we're going to schedule May 10th as the May regular board meeting, just knowing we won't have financials because it's too early. And then we will schedule a special meeting if it is needed between May 10th and the June board meeting, if we either need it for budget purposes or election purposes. Okay? All right? Okay.
And then we need to get everyone's availability throughout the summer months to see.
Yes, so need everybody to maybe let Donna know if you're going to be out of town and not available at any time in May and June. So we kind of have that. You don't have to do it right this minute, but maybe in case we have to do that. If we do some special meetings, we can also do them telephonically. We don't always have to be in person.
Next on the agenda is a closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is the motion pursuant to what's on the agenda?
Yes. Which I'm not going to read.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all for staying.
If anyone wants to stay, you're welcome to.